If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. Seems every week I get a few people telling me that they were unsubscribed without their permission. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacist and the YouTube administrators hate that. Now, that said, as we get closer to the election of 2020, there's been a lot of effort put into trying to tell black people that somehow we have a candidate who's going to do something for us. Neither one of these candidates, neither Trump nor Biden-Harris, are going to do a dang thing for black people. But because of the fact that the efforts to bamboozle our people have been intensified, and I notice that some of you have been going a little wobbly of late, I guess repetition surely is the mother of learning, or rather mislearning, I think it a good idea to reiterate, there's nobody out there who's actually speaking to your interests. There's not. They're using a bunch of weasel words, and what they're telling black folks is, well, one of these guys is going to win, so you have to vote for someone you know one of them's going to win. Do you know how much sense that makes? It would make about as much sense as going back in time to the year 1812 and telling some free, quote-unquote, free black person in Maryland or in New York, hey, you need to vote this election. One of these guys is going to win, and as a black person, hey, one of them's going to win. You need to vote for the lesser of two evils. Yeah, who gives a damn that 95.9% of black people are in chains, and the other 4.5% of them are only 3/5 human beings? Whoever wins the election of 1812, well, one of them's going to win, so you got a horse in this race, don't you know? Yeah, sure, they haven't promised a dang thing for black folks. Madison or Monroe or Quincy Adams or whoever the hell, they haven't promised black folks a damn thing. But you know, one of them's going to win, so you need to make a choice. It would make as much sense as doing that. But it just goes to show the times may change, but black people's desperation to at least pretend to have someone pretend as if they're listening to us, I guess the desperation is just so real. The thirst, the political thirst that simply cannot be quenched by facts, reason, or common sense, but that does not absolve us of the responsibility to try. So if you take a look at Donald Trump's plan, his platinum ploy for America, which we broke down a few weeks back, we already showed you what a fraud that was. Trump took his so-called plan and made sure to throw in black and brown and minority and all the rest of the code words and weasel words, making it very clear that there was no plan for black folks at all. He just mentioned black once or twice to rope you in, and then it becomes a bait and switch. Well, of course, Biden and Harris are pulling the exact same con. You look at their website to see what their plan is for America, and oh, what's the plan for black folks going to be? Well, let's start with their proposals for criminal justice. It's the same thing as Trump does, more money for the police. Oh, they start off dropping the word black, but they make sure that they mention black and brown. Don't want black folks thinking that they're special or anything. And there's one more throwaway mention of black, and then after that, nothing. So this is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have to say when it comes to black people and criminal justice reform. Not even an afterthought. Though he does make sure that for the header on this little section, he makes sure that he has some black faces there, specifically black women, because when he wants to make sure it's understood, this is who this is meant to appeal to. This is who he's trying to see if he can sucker. Now, while he didn't mention black more than once or twice, his plan did specifically mention women 9 times. So their criminal justice proposals, this is a platform to make things better for women, meaning white women, because they damn sure ain't thinking about black women. White suburbanite women would certainly like to know that someone's pandering and catering to them. So Joe Biden's criminal justice plan makes it clear he's thinking about white women more than 4 times as much as he does black people. This plan has nothing to do with us at all. And by the way, whenever you have the Democrats floating that whole Violence Against Women Act, it ought to be called the Karen Empowerment Act, because in practice, that's exactly what it would be. The Violence Against Women Act would be nothing more than weaponizing the law for all the Karens out there. But as we've been telling you guys for months now, anyone who tries to tell you that Joe Biden is somehow in favor of defunding the police like hell, you look at his own doggone website and he's already promising $300 million for the police so that they can hire more cops, more thugs with badges, more white supremacists under color of law, and make sure they get proper training, specifically in how to shoot. Make sure they get proper training in what lies to tell so that they can pretend as if there's some veneer of legality to murdering black people. That kind of thing. $300 million. You know, when schools are failing, they say the schools should be closed. But when police departments are failing to uphold the law and they're engaging in blatant criminality, well, we got to throw more money at them. Yeah, because when it comes to the enforcement arm of white supremacy, you can't really spare any expense, can you? So this is Joe Biden. No, he is not about defunding the police. He's about turbocharging the thugs with badges. And one part of their proposal that made me laugh out loud was their clearly do-nothing task force, as they called it, on prosecutorial discretion. Oh, really? You mean all these prosecutors who are deciding that if a black person is arrested for allegedly jaywalking, they won't even look at the charges against them. They'll just say, charge this nigger with attempted murder. You mean that? So we're going to start punishing these DAs who have clearly been weaponizing the law against black people, who have been using the completely slanted playing field that legislators like Joe Biden have given the prosecutors, and using their position as nothing more than making the incarceration of black people or making the immunity from law for white supremacists who kill black people into a paperwork process. So it's time to go after those guys, right? Time to make it clear when we see that you guys are much more likely, prosecutor ABC over here is much more likely to charge a black person with an offense than a white person arrested for the exact same cause. If we see that you throw the book at a black person, but you're always making plea deals with white people for the exact same charges. If we see that your track record with the grand jury seems to be rock solid with black defendants, but with white ones, particularly white defendants who are accused of harming a black person, all of a sudden your batting average drops. When we see that clearly you're weaponizing your post to mass incarcerate black people and give white offenders a slap on the wrist, we're coming after you. Is that what they propose? I think not. The wording alone is stupid. I mean, with Kamala Harris on this thing, what do you expect? Biden is proposing a task force. Do you know what a task force is? A task force is a small group with a limited purpose. They have an opening date and a closing date. They're specifically to carry out a task, and then after that, they're disbanded. So right from the jump, we understand that there's a serious problem here. The white supremacists don't need a task force to take care of them. What is required here is full-time vigilance. Full-time staying on their necks is what the white supremacists require. But Joe Biden's proposal is that he's going to have a task force, but one that's going to be outside the Justice Department. Not part of it, outside of it. We don't want anyone getting the wrong idea here thinking we're actually going to go after prosecutors, so we're going to make sure it's understood these guys are on the outside. You know, the entire purpose of a task force is that the task force is supposed to be, for the most part, carrying out a mission. They're supposed to be out there doing things. That's why you have a task force, to accomplish a task. And they're supposed to be empowered to do so, but you don't see anything here about empowering this alleged task force. Instead, what you see is they're going to be outside the Justice Department, which makes it clear Biden and Harris, they don't want anyone even thinking that this task force is actually part of the Justice Department. They're outside the Justice Department. That means they'll have no authority. They won't have the ability to actually punish anyone or arrest anyone or go after anyone or charge anyone. They're not going to be able to act as a point person for anything. They're not going to be a point group for anything. And the Department of Justice can tell all the crooked cops and all the racist DAs and tell all of the racist attorney generals like the corrupt Daniel Cameron in Kentucky, tell them, hey, that task force, they're outside the Department of Justice. They have no jurisdiction over us. They have no authority over us. They have no influence. They call no shots. And that'll be great for the Bob McCulloughs. That'll be great for all the Daniel Camerons and the rest of the racist prosecutors out there. But for the black community, what this means is we're going to have a sham. And it'll be some make work for a couple of token Negroes. The next Kamala Harris, she can find her way from under whatever desk that she's taking dictation under, and she can go ahead and have a do-nothing job with this task force, same as Kamala Harris did with the State Insurance Commission in California back in the day. Oh, and just to make sure that this task force is not meant to do anything, just so that there's no confusion on that point, Biden states specifically that the task force will only have the ability to make recommendations. They won't have the power to enforce their recommendations. They won't have the power to charge anyone. They won't have the power to point out who's going to get prosecuted. It's just a matter of they can only make recommendations for tackling discrimination and other problems. I mean, could you be more vague? Discrimination and other problems. No specifics here at all. They're being vague as possible. So a do-nothing task force outside the Justice Department with no connection to the Justice Department and no authority is going to have the ability to make recommendations. It doesn't say to whom, because you're outside the Justice Department, so who the hell are you making recommendations to? The President? The National Security Agency? Who? The U.S. Department of Agriculture? Who are you making these recommendations to? And what are you making them for? We're going to tackle discrimination and other problems. That's a joke. Oh, and by the way, if this make recommendations task force sounds at all familiar, it should. This is the exact same con game that they run when it comes to reparations. No actual office for reparations, no permanent office of black affairs. Instead, it's going to be a committee. A do-nothing committee who will come up with some do-nothing recommendations. Nothing specific, mind you. And they don't actually have the power to do anything. They have no authority. They can't subpoena anyone. They can't punish anyone. They don't have the ability to arrest anyone or charge anyone. So what the hell's the point? The point is so that they can get us to talk, and when we're through talking, we can talk some more. All those crooked prosecutors out there will have absolutely nothing to fear from a Biden-Harris administration, and that's the entire point. This entire asinine little proposal reads exactly like it was written up by the Fraternal Order of Police. I had to search through this thing to see whether or not you had trash like Patrick Lynch, the chief thug of the NYPD, whether or not he had his incompetent, evil little fingers on this one. I was checking for his satanic fingerprints. I'm sure they're on here somewhere. Family, don't you go believe in any of that guff that Kamala Harris has been spewing, acting like she's discovered religion. Let me tell you something. Kamala Harris is a career prosecutor. And every time she talked about locking up people, especially black people, she laughed her butt off. I showed you the video clips. Talking about locking up single mothers who are homeless on the streets. She would laugh and cackle like the witch she is. She would be howling with laughter. Every time you talk about locking people up, she just starts laughing. That tickles her. Oh man, to her, that's hilarious. That's a knee slapper. She rolls in the aisles. The very thought of locking up black people brings a smile to her face. She can't contain her laughter. And this is the person that you want to have directing national policy? I mean, you saw how good she did by black people in California. Man, there wasn't a corrupt, racist cop in the state who didn't know that they had the green light from her. She never failed to get the endorsement of the police, not when she was running for San Francisco DA or Attorney General or U.S. Senate. She could always get the endorsement of the thugs with badges. That's because she could always be counted on to give them a pass on everything, and to make sure that the prosecutors were never interfered with when it came time to make sure that the latest killing of a black person by some thug with a badge went unanswered. What did Kamala Harris do for prosecutorial oversight when she was Attorney General of California? Did she police all of those county prosecutors and who were giving black people extreme charges and just locking up black folks for no reason, harshest sentences that they could seek? Did she do anything about that? Did she come down those prosecutors and say, wait a minute here, you seem to be going after the black folks and giving all these white offenders a pass? When it came to police use of force in California, Kamala Harris flat out refused to use her ability to prosecute cops. She said that she thought, well, that kind of thing is best left to local prosecutors. In other words, don't do nothing about it. You're the attorney general. You're in the position to do something about it. That's your purview. That's part of your portfolio. You're supposed to step in. You know, people have been howling about this for decades, if not centuries in California. They've been talking about how these prosecutors are completely and thoroughly out of control, that they condone murder under law so long as it's a white person killing a black person or is just a thug with a badge in general. And what did Kamala Harris do? Did she say, whoa, I gotta make sure that we do some oversight? Are you guys exercising proper prosecutorial discretion? Is that what she said? No, she said, leave it up to the local prosecutors. That's the intrastate equivalent of saying states' rights. I'm not going to interfere with the thuggery going on at the local level. Sure, by law I can, but I won't. So if she couldn't be bothered to do anything about the out-of-control prosecutorial misconduct in California, all of the vicious prosecutions, the retaliatory prosecutions, the malicious prosecutions going on, if she couldn't be bothered to do anything about that in California, what makes you think that she's suddenly going to discover religion when she has influence over the Department of Justice for the entire country? You see, that's why she always got the endorsement of the thugs with badges in California every time she ran for office. The past is the best indicator of the future, and Kamala Harris has shown that she's not about to do anything about these prosecutors. She should be able to at least point to one prosecutor that she went after. She points to none. Oh, but now is a brand new day. She's going to do something. Yeah, she's going to tell you the same thing she told black folks when Matrice Richardson was murdered. Same thing she told black folks when Oscar Grant was killed. Well, it would be nice if I could do something, but there's really nothing I can do. There's really nothing I can do. That's what she's going to say. Kamala Harris cannot point out to you even one instance anywhere in the country where she's seen a prosecutor who she can say, whoa, this person's overstepped their boundaries. And if I had the authority at the federal level to go after them, I would. She's never pointed out to any situation like that. During her damn to fail campaign for president, she was asked about how was it that her prosecutors, when she was attorney general, were pressing prisoners into forced labor, putting out fires and such, and keeping people in prison past their terms and trying to keep people locked up on technicalities. This is her own prosecutor's office, not even a prosecutor in another county or another state. This is her own prosecutors. And she was asked about that, and she said, I'll have to look into that. This woman can't even manage her own handful of prosecutors. She could not be bothered to go after prosecutorial misconduct. Apparently, she never saw a prosecutor who she didn't like. And her own people that she had, apparently there was nothing that they ever did that she had a problem with. By the way, here we are a year later. Has she ever gotten back to us regarding her prosecutors using every unscrupulous and often illegal means to keep people locked up past their sentences, to keep people locked up past the date that they were supposed to be out, to deny people release from prison, to keep people on death row, innocent people on death row? Has she answered for that yet? Has she gotten back to us yet about that? I'll wait. And wait, and wait. It's been going on 2 years since she was confronted on that issue. It was like January 2019. And here she is. Damn near 2 years later, she still hasn't gotten back to us about that. You know who that reminds me of? It reminds me of Donald Trump and all of his claims about how there were millions and millions, or as he says, millions and millions of fake votes, vote fraud, millions and millions of phony ballots cast. And then he had the good old boy governor of Oklahoma who's supposed to be heading up his task force. I think task force is just a fancy way of saying do nothing. So, we're going to go ahead and give you some free money for sitting on your butt all day. The governor of Oklahoma was supposed to go and hunt down all of those millions and millions of phony votes and voter fraud. And well, here we are 4 years later, and he hasn't even brought one example. But it just goes to show it's hot air from these people. Whenever they get caught out in their lies, they try to slink away first chance they get. And Kamala Harris, this is what she did when she was confronted about the prosecutorial misconduct of the very DAs and state prosecutors under her authority. She didn't know anything about it, couldn't say anything about it, but don't worry, she'll get back to us. 2 years later, still ain't gotten back to us. Oh, but don't worry, if you make her vice president, she'll turn over a new leaf and she'll start going after prosecutors. There's no evidence she's ever done it before, but don't worry, it's a brand new day. It's a brand new day, don't you know? Come on, seriously. Are we really so dense that we can't see through this scam? I mean, how many more examples do you need piled up for you? Are we really this gullible? Well, apparently some of us, yes. Based on what I've seen in recent weeks. The weak-minded and the weak-willed and the easily duped, you guys are going to wind up being roadkill under white supremacy. Now, that was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's criminal justice plan. I'm not going to go through all of it because it's just basically a repetition of nonsense. It's very similar to Trump's plan, but you see what's going on here. More money for the cops. And we'll put together a task force that's going to look at discrimination and problems. And we're going to be asking some questions about arrests and charging of black people. Ain't going to do anything about it, but we'll make some recommendations, though. Not going to actually do anything, just make recommendations. Next, we have Biden's much ballyhooed Lift Every Voice plan. Biden's plan for Black America. Oh, it sends a chill down my spine, and as Chris Matthews would say, it sends a tingle up my leg hearing about that. Oh, lift every voice. You see, the title is clearly meant to appeal to the black church-going baby boomer crowd. And the chances of winning elections simply based on them, that's about as viable as many of them are. In what's supposed to be a plan for Black America, though, I like to do word counts just to see how many times will the word black come up. You notice I do that a lot with these plans. And this Lift Every Voice plan, it manages to mention the word black only 10 times. This thing is long, by the way. It's a whole lot of words that say absolutely nothing. It's like the first freaking 6 chapters of War and Peace. They mention the word black, however, only 10 times. And what a surprise. 5 of those mentions are about historically black colleges and universities. So in the plan for Black America, the word black only comes up 10 times. And half of those have to do with historically black colleges and universities. I'm sure that's the reason why roly-poly's sitting there going, you know, if this whole White House spokesman thing falls apart, if I can't get myself a job on a task force, then maybe I can get myself a job at one of these universities, you know, because God knows they've been throwing away the students' money and all that tuition money. They've been throwing away like a bunch of drunken sailors, and maybe I can get me a job at one of them. Get myself a professorship. Yeah, I can teach urinalism. That's right, teach some urinalism, so we can have another generation of idiots who are going to be pretending to be sucking up to these white liberals on cable TV, and when they inevitably get themselves fired, they can go ahead and get themselves a YouTube channel where they buy a bunch of views because ain't nobody listening to them, and they too can aspire to work at a HBCU as soon as I get fired because I ain't giving up my job one Negro at a time. You see, that's the only people who are actually going to be taking this seriously. Those Negroes who realize that no, whatever little government make-work job that you're hoping to get, whatever supposed presidential blue ribbon committee or whatever presidential commission that, or what have you, whatever ceremonial title you're hoping to get, you ain't going to be a spokesperson. You're not going to be press secretary, so you can give that one up. No, you're not going to be getting a cabinet position or anything else. No, you're not going to be getting a staffing position, no matter how much Democrat behind you kiss. So maybe if they can float some money to these HBCUs, assuming that all of these minorities and people of color, Latinos and Asians and such, assuming that they don't completely flood you out and wash you away, then what'll happen is maybe you can get yourself a do-nothing professorship. Apparently that's plan D for a lot of these clowns, and the D stands for dumb. But since the word black is only mentioned 10 times, I decided to check out what other mentions they have, whatever euphemisms for black that are actually meant to be for other people. Well, the phrase people of color is mentioned no less than 8 times. in this lift every voice and sing proposal. Great, so you've got the term people of color, which means everyone who's not white and a few who are. You mention people of color almost as many times as you mention black. More times than you mention historically black colleges and universities. And the phrase minority owned shows up in this segment 19 times. They mention the phrase minority owned almost twice as many times as they mention the term black. Hey, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and go by Joe Biden's little website, joebiden.com/Black America. And you can use the search engine. You can use the find tool in your search browser to look up how many times minority owned is mentioned in that section, in that so-called plan. You see it's 19 times that it's mentioned. Almost double the number of times that the word black is mentioned. So what does that tell us about the plan for Black America? It's actually a plan for people of color, which means Latinos, Asians, Native Americans, everybody but black, and minority owned, which means everyone but black people and at least half of white people, meaning white women. And of course, white gays, they can be included in that too. White gays, white people with handicaps, white people of a particular religion, basically as long as you're not a straight white male, then you can go ahead and be a white person and get this and get minority status. And that means that this is going to also have something for you too. So there you go. This is the Lift Every Voice plan for Black America. No different than Donald Trump's platinum-plated fraud. These guys are basically whistling the exact same tune and seeing if you'll dance to it. And I'm telling you, you're a damn fool if you do. The bait and switch couldn't be more blatant. Oh, this is about black people. Then when you look at it, man, there's a whole lot of minority owned in here. Yeah, twice as many as they mention black people. And people of color is mentioned almost as many times as black. That's what it's about. And when you put people of color and minority owned together, what you get is 27 mentions of anything but black. Now, at the bottom of their do nothing, lift every voice proposal, they have a link. Joe and Kamala will empower black men. Really now? Now, keep in mind, this whole thing about empower black men, they didn't have that as part of their lift every voice deal. They decide we're going to make this separate. That was deliberate. And it lets you know they hear us and they fear us. That's the reason why they had to put this in here, because they damn sure weren't talking like this before. Ain't been saying much about this on the campaign trail now, have they? Up until a few months ago, they were listening to Simone Mamie Sanders and Angela Rye with lettuce and tomatoes on the side, and Donna Brazile and the rest of these clowns. And they were saying, hey, this is going to be all about black women because those black men, they've been talking way too rebelliously. And we got to make sure that we fracture that support. These black men have been talking the wrong way and they've been saying the wrong things. We need to get them off of that. What we're going to do is we're going to try to isolate them. We're going to butter up black women and give black women all this phony, insincere praise and see if black women go for it. And black women will fall for it. They did in the 60s. They'll fall for it again, but black women didn't fall for it. They were listening to black men. And that being the case, it's like, oh, God. Well, okay, in that case, then let's see if we can butter up these black men. We'll pretend as if, oh, we're listening to you. We hear what you say. Oh, we're going to even use some of your language, some of your jargon. You say empowerment. We're going to use the word empower. And you say you want to hear specifically black. We'll use the word specifically black. We're not actually going to mean it, but we're going to do it. We're going to fly this as a trial balloon and see if it gets you black media types who have been giving us so much heartburn. See if this fools you. They're going to be trying to see if they can appeal to us now, see if they can fool us, because part of Biden and Harris's proposal happens to be a plan specifically for black men, huh? Oh, be still, my beating heart. Now, the first part of this section says that in 2016, President Trump asked black Americans what they had to lose by voting for him. After 4 years, it's clear. Now, it's clear what the Latinos have to lose, those detention centers, and it's very clear what Asians have to lose. But for black folks, our lot hasn't changed one bit. Now, when Trump sits here telling this lie about, I put all these black folks to work more than any in the history of the country. Man, I ain't seen one black neighborhood that's been rehabilitated economically. I haven't seen one black neighborhood lifted out of poverty because of him. But you know what? Haven't seen any added to it either. Nothing's changed. It's not a matter of Donald Trump is worse than Biden. It's damn sure not a case of he's better. It's a matter of there's been no change. Everybody claims that they're doing right by us. Everybody does it. Republicans and Democrats, both of them claim that they're doing great. Black folks are doing great under the Republicans. You're doing great under Trump. Can't tell by looking. Oh, you were doing better under the Democrats. Couldn't tell by looking. Their section goes on to say black Americans, especially black men, risk losing everything in Trump's America. Well, it's been 4 years now and our lot hasn't changed at all. These other groups are out here howling bloody murder, and good. They get to see what it's like to be us for a change. At least they get to have a little bit of a taste, not a hard taste. Just a little bit of a whiff of what it's like to be us. As far as they're concerned, they're screaming bloody murder. So as far as Trump being in there, he's been no great shakes, obviously, but it ain't been the end of the world either. And the fact that they have to start off like that, they should not have to say something like, it's clear what you have to lose. Instead, they should be pointing and saying, you know what? Black America's on its deathbed because of Donald Trump, and black men are breathing their last breath because of Donald Trump. Nah. Barack Obama sat on his damn hands, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they spent a combined 50, 60 years being the 1-2 legislative prosecutorial punch of anti-black racism. Joe Biden wrote the laws meant to target black men, and Kamala Harris used them every chance she got, and she protected everybody who did use them in California. So this dog just won't hunt. You're going to lose everything if Trump remains in power, stupid. We already lost everything with Obama and Clinton. You have freaking Biden and Harris who took everything from economic opportunities to our freedom to our lives. Trump has no new material. Sure, he's a white supremacist, no different than Joe Biden. Sure, Donald Trump bumps elbows with racists. Joe Biden was mentored by segregationists and racists. And Kamala Harris was raised in a family with anti-black culture. So that being the case, what's the difference here? Am I supposed to get scared of Donald Trump? We've had Donald Trump for 4 years now. It's no different than what it was with Barack Obama. Bill Barr made it very clear. I'm not prosecuting any cops. I don't give a damn how many black people they kill. Wow, he sounds just like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Bill Barr's Justice Department has not prosecuted even one cop for the killing of a black person. What a surprise. Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch didn't prosecute any cops for killing black folks either. They have not gone after any prosecutors at all for racial disparities in prosecution rates. Yeah, neither did Eric Holder or Loretta Lynch. So I fail to see where there's going to be this big change. To me, it just seems as if there's a complete and thorough consistency of policy when it comes to going after black people. So no, you're not going to say Donald Trump's this, Donald Trump's that. Yeah, you may be right, but so what? You're not going to be any different. Hell, these guys were weaponizing the law against black people before Donald Trump was even thinking about politics. Though I did have a bit of a chuckle when in the third paragraph it says he, talking about Donald Trump, does not accept responsibility for the devastating impact that his policies and his attitude have on black men. You sure that's Trump you're talking about and not Biden or Harris? Has Biden ever taken responsibility for the 86 Anti-Drug Abuse Act? Has he ever taken responsibility for Biden's law? I'm sorry, I mean the 94 crime bill. You see, when Biden and Harris talk about addressing the sentencing disparity between rock and powder cocaine, what they leave out is that back in the 80s, when that law was put on the books, Joe Biden, who was a senator then, he voted for it. Yeah, the law that created the sentencing disparity between rock and powder cocaine, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, that was Joe Biden who supported that. Actually, I think it was the 84 Act before it that actually crystallized that, no pun intended. But Joe Biden voted for all of that legislation meant to target black people, black men in particular. He voted for that crap back in the 80s. And then he got tired of just voting for it. He was like, you know what? I want to get on the action. I want to write some of these laws myself. So he wrote the 1994 crime bill. Has Joe Biden ever accepted responsibility for it? No, he blames black preachers, just like Bill Clinton did before. Well, it was the black preachers. What could I do? These black preachers, all these black, they were the ones who wanted me to lock up all these niggers. It was the black preachers. Just tonight, Joe Biden decided to have a town hall. And part of it was he was asked about the 94 crime bill. And even now, he doesn't take responsibility for it. Instead, he's trying to lie about, well, it was the states. The states were the ones who got all draconian against black people. Why, you can't blame me. It was the states. The problem was the states, what they did. Yeah, I told you about that he always uses that as a lie. That's the shield he hides behind. It was the states. But he doesn't tell you is that in the 94 crime bill was a $13 billion incentive for the states, $13 billion in free federal cash if the states would change their state criminal statutes to make them as harsh as Biden's law. See, that's the part that he leaves out. Before Biden's law was written, only about 8 or so states had criminal statutes that Biden actually liked, that he thought were tough enough. After he passed Biden's law, the other 42 states got online because they all wanted a piece of that $13 billion pie. He never tells anybody that, oh, the federal government paid the states, put a bounty on black people's heads. Gave him $13 billion to go after black people. He tries to make it sound like, oh, the states did this all on their own. Well, the states, the problem was the way that they implemented it. No, they copycatted exactly what the federal government did. They copied what Joe Biden put on the books exactly. But here he is refusing to take responsibility for it. And this is tonight, by the way. We're not talking about a year ago or 6 months ago or even last week or even yesterday. This is what happened just tonight. Just a couple of hours ago. That's what Joe Biden says today. He accepts no responsibility for the 94 crime bill, Biden's law. He accepts no responsibility for the turbocharging of the prison industrial complex. He accepts no responsibility for all of the anti-black criminal legislation that he had signed or co-sponsored before that. So it seems Trump's not the only one who doesn't accept responsibility for the devastating impact of his policies and his attitude. And when Joe Biden was asked about it, he would be belligerent. Either he would try to lie his way out of it, or he just wouldn't talk about it altogether. And Kamala Harris, same thing. Hey, what about all of these people who have been unjustly put in prison by your office? How about all these people who your prosecutors have fought to keep in prison past their term or fought to keep them on death row even though you knew that they were innocent, Kamala? Don't you take responsibility for that? Well, I'm going to have to look into that. I'm going to have to see what was actually said because I wasn't the one who was actually in court making these arguments. So I'm going to have to look into that for you. I'll get back to you. Yeah, it seems Trump ain't the only one who refuses to take responsibility for his actions and his words and his attitude and his policies. Biden and Harris don't take any damn responsibility either. I mean, it's really cynical that they would call this a fact sheet. Has very few facts. A lot of opinions, a lot of invective, but very few facts. Now, when it comes to these do-nothing proposals, a lot of words written for their plan to empower black men. But the thing is, I'm not going to waste too much of the breath of life dissecting this. I'll just do a couple of comparisons between what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's plan for black men says and what Donald Trump's platinum-plated ploy was about. And you'll see that it's basically cut and paste the exact same thing. These guys are saying the same stuff. Trump's platinum-plated plan promised to make the Minority Business Development Agency permanent and would allocate up to $40 billion in government funding. Harris and Biden are promising $20 billion for the exact same agency, the Minority Business Development Agency. There goes that word again, minority. And of course, when you look at some of this other stuff with the Minority Business Development Agency, they have a plan for $5 billion in annual lending and investment, which will include black communities. See, this is Kamala Harris with that Lift Act garbage. Well, you see, it's going to be something for everyone, and everyone includes Black America. We said specifically for us. I'm not going to do something that only benefits black people. No. Oh, but she's got a plan to empower black men. So she's not going to do something that only benefits black people, but apparently I guess she doesn't think black men are black people. I guess as black men, we don't qualify as black people in her eyes. Create millions of good paying jobs for all Americans. Man. So the portion that's supposed to be, this is supposed to be the part that's meant to fool the black media. This is supposed to be the part that gives them some verbiage that hopefully their shills online, their little Twitter trolls will be able to point and say, you can't say that Kamala didn't promise anything. The shea butter bootlicks can point and say, see, she's got a portion just for black men. It's on their website. See, they actually address this. See, they address this. You say that they left black men out. Why, there's a portion just for black men. No, I see a whole bunch of talk about for all Americans. Minority business development. That's what I see. Oh, we're going to create millions of good paying jobs for all Americans. Now, when it comes time to talk about tax cuts for the upper 1%, they're specific about the money involved. When it comes time to talk about good paying jobs, all of a sudden they get real vague. How much of that money is going to be put into black people's hands, into black men's hands specifically? I ain't talking about, well, there'll be a government program and maybe you can apply for something. No, I'm talking about cutting the check. How about that? Well, we get real vague. We enter a gray area there. How gray? Charcoal. That's what happens here. So Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's little plan, what was supposed to be a sop to the black media, was supposed to fool us or at least give some rhetorical cover to the shea butter chills and the sorority fraternity hacks that they got pumping out the propaganda for them. We see that it falls flat. You're a world-class idiot when you can't even get the propaganda right. So family, you better make sure you stay on point with this one. When it comes to Biden and Harris and Trump, it's a distinction without a difference. That's the reason why that's the title of this evening's video essay. Because some of you out there, you're thinking to yourselves because they reworded some of the lies and they're beating the drum a little bit extra hard, or at least you're seeing some of that garbage, and that's by design. Some of these people who you see copying and pasting links to online articles or videos with them saying this stuff, these are some of their operatives. They're just selling the soap. They're pushing the propaganda. That's their job. Their job is to try to get it in front of you. But there is no plan for Black America, okay? There's a plan for minorities, which doesn't include us. It includes white women, Hispanics, Asians, etc. There's a plan for people of color, but there is no plan for Black America, and damn sure no plan for black men. There's a plan for minorities and all Americans, but not a plan for black men. And there's not one from Trump either. You got a choice between a less than courteous racist in the form of Joe Biden and a duplicitous poser calling herself a black woman, Kamala Harris. Or you got a choice between a rude racist. I mean, what flavor of white supremacy do you want? Do you want diet white supremacy, or at least white supremacy with a different label on it? Or do you prefer the white supremacy that says, yeah, nigger, we're coming for you? Which one do you want? It's a fool who looks at this and thinks that this is some sort of choice. There is no choice because black empowerment is not on the ballot. Trying to imitate our verbiage, that doesn't fool us. We told them what was required and they've made it clear they're not going to do that. They have not come to us. They have not bent the knee. We are talking about trillions of dollars that's going to be required to address the damage that white supremacy, Democrats and Republicans alike, have done to the black community. And that means all of us who came out of the killing fields of the American South, by whatever labels specifically that you might want to call yourself, whether it's descendants of American slaves, foundational black Americans, survivors of slavery in America, whatever you want to call it. The point is, those of us who can trace our lineage back to the killing fields of the American South, you damn well better believe we understand that there's going to have to be trillions of dollars allocated to us to repair this damage. We ain't looking for no freaking loans. When it came to the Homestead Act, you didn't give white people loans. All those white boys who came back from World War I and World War II, they weren't given loans. They were giving housing grants. They weren't given college loans. They were given a GI Bill, not college loans. The government paid for their education. They were given business grants, not loans. That meant a white guy who came home from either of those world wars, he got himself a house, he got himself an education, and he got himself some startup capital, all on the government's dime. You know how much capital and time that frees up when you're not having to worry about having to come up with the money for a home, come up with the money for a business loan, come up with the money for your education? Is being provided for you free of charge. You know how much time that frees up, gives you a huge head start. What did the black GIs get when they came home from World War I? They got lynched. When they came home from World War II, they got lynched and firebombed. They didn't get a damn thing. So black people were paying the taxes that went to all of these white GIs, many of whom became lawyers, and later on prosecutors. Many of those white guys who went to those universities would become university professors. And they would continue to push all kinds of crazy crackpot racialist nonsense about black people, the inherent inferiority of black people. That's what the government was subsidizing. And those white men coming home from the war who became business owners, first thing that they did when they opened their business, no blacks allowed. Don't want any black customers, damn sure don't want any black employees. The government subsidized all of that. No, there were no loans that were made. They wanted to leave nothing to chance. White supremacy can't have any it can't have any debts that it needs to pay back, especially not to the former slaves. But we're going to be taking it out of their butts one way or the other. So family, don't be fooled by either Trump or Biden and Harris. Neither one of them has our interest at heart. Their plans are nothing more than the same old snake oil. What they did is they've been listening to us because the voices of the new black media are too loud to be ignored. They ain't listening to the roly-polies and such, these would-be head Negroes in charge who are in charge of nothing, by the way. Nobody listens to these clowns. Nobody's following them. They have no stroke. They have no influence. They have no pull. You don't see them imitating the crap that roly-poly says. You see these guys trying to appropriate our verbiage because they understand that they're not going to win without young black voters, and the young black voters ain't listening to them. Both political parties pursuing the exact same rhetorical strategy with the exact same words. What does that tell you? Both of these guys are working together. They're having a competition to see which one of them is going to be able to effectively fool and deceive us. Which one of them can get us to con ourselves into thinking that either one of them is going to do a doggone thing for us. That's the reason why you haven't been seeing me dissect these plans before now. I already knew what the hell was in them. I knew what Biden's plan was before he added the little addendum about the empowering black men. You ain't empowering a damn thing. Kamala Harris has spent her entire worthless life ignoring the harming and murders of black people, male and female alike, in California. You're not going to sit here and tell me that you care about a Violence Against Women Act. Matrice Richardson lies in her grave tonight. Kamala Harris didn't even say boo. Sandra Bland, dead. Kamala Harris has nothing to say about that. Breonna Taylor, dead. Kamala Harris is not vowing that if she becomes vice president, make me vice president, and I'm going to go not only after the cops who murdered Breonna Taylor, I'm also going to go after that Commonwealth attorney Thomas Wine for his malicious prosecution of Kenneth Walker, and I'm also going to go after Daniel Cameron for what is clearly prosecutorial misconduct. But then again, Kamala Harris understands that what Daniel Cameron did is the same thing that she did when she was DA of San Francisco and Attorney General of California. He's doing the same thing she's done, so she's not about to go after him because, truth be told, she approves of it. She's done the exact same stuff. There will be no difference under Biden or Harris. Bill Barr's not standing up for black folks, and neither is Kamala Harris. Bill Barr has made it very clear. As far as he's concerned, black folks getting killed, so what? Kamala Harris will say, so what? But she'll also go, oh, so very sad. So what? So black folks, those of you who consider yourselves to be about black empowerment, you better stop letting these paid Democrat operatives tell you that somehow just because Kamala Harris, who is the only one of the team who's even halfway verbal at this point, just because they use some of our verbiage, that's meant to get your attention. It's meant to fool you. Oh, look, they're coming around. Look, let me take the suspense out of it for you. They're not going to come around this election cycle. Some of you who clearly have the attention span of a gnat on meth, you're thinking to yourselves, come on, we need to hurry up and declare victory so I can get back to Xbox. Hey, the new PlayStation's coming out. When are the movie theaters going to open up again? I can't wait for them to lift this quarantine so I can go back to the club. You're trying to figure out how you can give yourself an excuse to declare victory and leave. And I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. Damn sure ain't going to happen this election cycle. So for those of you out there who have just been looking for an excuse to leave, I'll give you better than an excuse. I'll give you an order. Get the hell out of here. You ain't built for this. You ain't cut out for this. And those of you who quit the field before the battle's won, you're not going to have black empowerment. You're not going to have anything. You don't deserve to have anything. This is going to be the new normal for us. Right now, white supremacy's testing us. They're testing us to see if we meant what we said. They're trying to break our resolve, and a lot of you will go for it, but this message is not for you. The weak-willed and weak-minded, this ain't for you. This is for the die-hard B1. That's who this is for. This is not something that we're doing simply until some Democrats bend the knee. This is the new normal, and the end goal, our stated mission, is to put black folks in the driver's seat. I do not want a situation where I have to be arguing with some reprobate on the left or the right to get them to do my bidding. Ultimately, what we will have is we are going to be choosing the individuals from among our own ranks. Power is far too important to be left to chance. It is far too important to be arguing or bickering or going back and forth and arm wrestling with anyone about it. So you better understand that. No, there is not going to be any sort of black empowerment this election cycle. Neither one of the parties are for that. They're trying to get us off of this agenda. They're digging in their heels. But I'm not concerned about what these bastards are doing. I'm concerned about what it is that we are doing. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to shut our ears to anything that the operatives of either the left or right arms of the propaganda of white supremacy have to say. We are not listening to either of the political wings of white supremacy. Because those wings work for the same master and they fight the same common enemy, that is you and me. Well, we're not going to help them undermine us. These are not plans that Trump and Biden have put forward as political propaganda. These are meant to tell us this is the only thing you're going to get. Don't ask for it. Don't tell us what it's going to be. This is all. We're going to tell you how it's going to be. That's what Biden was saying a couple of months ago. Here's my plan, and you need to take this to your community. Whoa, hold up now, wrinkles. You're supposed to be a public servant. A servant does not tell his employer what to do. You don't come up to your employer and say, here's the plan, boss, and here's what you're going to do. No, you got it all backwards. But you see, this is how comfortable they've become because black people have allowed them to be comfortable with this. We've allowed them to be comfortable coming up to us and telling us what it's going to be. They don't go up to other groups and say, here's the plan you need to take back to your constituency. Take this back to your group. They don't go up to the LGBT community and say, here's the plan you need to take back to your people. It's like, nah, they ACT UP or whatever LGBT organization. These guys are the ones who tell them what it's going to be, not the other way around. It's only black people who they come up to and say, well, here's what it is. And when black people say, well, here's the agenda we want you to take to Washington, I'm not going to do something that only benefits black people. No. That's what they tell us when we present our plan to them, because that's the way it's supposed to be done. The constituents, the voters, are supposed to be the ones telling the would-be representative, here's the agenda you're going to take to Washington. Instead, it's a matter of, nah, we got this watered-down plan that was given to us, talking points that came straight from Jeff Bezos and came straight from the rest of the billionaire 1% of America to make sure that the status quo never changes. And you need to take this to your community and tell them that this is good for all of you dumb little niggers, and this is the best deal you're going to get, so don't complain about it. The country's not perfect, but it's the best deal you can get, and that's all there is to it. No, that's not all there is to it. And we're not going for the okie doke. We're the ones who are taking charge. Because nowhere in either Trump or Biden's plans do you see them talking about what they're going to do to stamp out white supremacy. Where's the section about white supremacy? Where's the section about going after these militias and these groups like Adam Waffen and the alt-right and the Boogaloo Boys and all the rest of these clowns? Where's the section talking about what they're going to do, the plan to go after the white supremacists specifically? Where's the plan to go after the Proud Boys at? I want to know where that plan is. See, Trump puts in there Antifa, which is what he really wants. His talking about, we're going to go after the KKK. Man, the KKK is largely defunct. These guys have already metastasized and spread out to other groups. The KKK was your grandfather's white supremacist organization. These guys have gone digital and spread out. But Antifa, on the other hand, see, he didn't sit there and say, I'm going to go after the ACLU or the American Communist Party or something. He didn't say that. He said Antifa. In other words, this is a smokescreen for Trump to go after his political enemies and claim, well, I said the KKK too. That's the con game that he's got going. But nowhere do you see Trump talking about his plan to stamp out white supremacy. And Biden and Harris don't talk about any such plan either, because there's not one. This is about protecting white supremacy, preserving white supremacy, augmenting white supremacy. This is about protecting white supremacy from this black empowerment threat that has begun to grow and manifest itself. That's what this is about. It is about getting us to give up on the war against white supremacy, because you can tell both of the major parties, they don't have a plan for what they're going to do about white supremacy, because there isn't a plan. Nobody, you would think with all this legislation, all these proposals, they say, here's our plan to stamp out white supremacy. Now ain't gonna be no legislation about that. Not this election, not any other election. 19 mentions of minority owned. 8 mentions of people of color. 5 mentions of historically black colleges and universities. 8 mentions of women. 0 mentions of white supremacy. So there you go. But you know what? We're not waiting for Trump or Biden and Harris to come up with some sort of plan for white supremacy's demise, because the black empowerment sphere, the new voices of black media, this black grassroots, we got a plan of our own for how we're going to make sure that white supremacy is gone, crushed to dust, never to rise again. And there is no pathetic little pretend plan that anyone can propose that's going to get us to turn away from that.